All right. All right, everybody. We have a really cool interview today with Radu Antoniu. Am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah, you're pronouncing it perfectly. Actually,
Awesome.
my name is usually pronounced wrong uh, in my country, but you actually said it the right way.
Really? Awesome.
Yeah,
Perfect. Well, I looked it up in
awesome.
Google Plus, so I cheated a little bit. Um, or Google Translate, sorry. Yeah, so Radu, you're in Romania, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm actually Hungarian, so we are actually neighbors. Um,
Really?
Yeah, I'm currently in New Zealand. But yeah, so it's an interesting and actually for the listeners, we had to stretch this a little bit because there's a 10-hour difference. So at, it's 10
Yeah,
p.m.
it's
at
it's
Radu, and yeah.
exactly. Yeah, it's late at night in Romania and early morning in New Zealand.
Yeah, exactly. But well, it's not very official. I'm still in bed, but nevertheless, sure. I'm sure we will have a cool interview. So just let me give people a little bit of background on how I found you. Essentially,
Sure.
in the beginning, I was just watching videos of Gregor Gallagher at Kino Body, and I just found a few videos when you appeared and you kind of interviewed him, and at first I was just like, yeah, well, it's just some guy with a cool accent, and I didn't really know didn't really know who you are. And then later I remember I was browsing through videos on YouTube just on rep ranges and how they affect muscle growth, and I came across your video, and I was very impressed because it was a very thorough analytical overview of the research essentially. And I was like, yeah, wow, this guy really like goes through stuff and does his research. And I kept looking through your videos, and you seem to put in a lot of effort, and you do quality work. So kudos for you for that. And
Thank you.
yeah, and so let's give a little bit of background on you. Who are you? How old are you? What do you? As far as I know, you're still in university. And how did you become interested in fitness?
All right. So, well, I'm 21 years old, and I live in Romania. And actually, fitness became an interest of mine only a few years ago. When I was in high school, you know that everybody wants to look better, to be more attractive for the girls, and feel more confident. And that was the main driver of me wanting to change my physique. And I actually started lifting in the 11th grade. So when I was about 17 years old, a good friend of mine, Raresh, who appears a lot on my videos, he was actually the one that got me to the gym in the first place. And we lifted together for a while, for about 7 or 8 months, and we did all the stupid things you see online. We did we used to get our information from Men's Health, so you can imagine that every week we changed it up because muscle confusion, and you need to hit your muscle from all different angles and all that.
Oh yeah.
But of course, we made some gains because we were complete beginners, and after a while, I got into my last year of high school, and I got involved with in an multi-level company. You know, those network marketing companies, and I focused my attention on that. And at that point, I decided that I'm gonna start going to the gym because I wasn't making progress anymore. I was getting frustrated with that. I tried. I was trying to get lean at that time, and I was failing. And I said, you know what? I'm just gonna um, quit going to the gym altogether and worrying about my diet and focus on these other areas of my life. But after I finished high school, then I got my interest back in fitness, and I wanted to, that every a common goal in everybody is that they want to have an amazing physique. Um, Greg talks about this a lot. If you go into a room with 100 people, probably the only common goal everybody has is to be healthy and to look better, probably. So we deep down, we all want to achieve that physique, that dream physique that you see in movies, and I that was still a goal of mine. So what I did when I wanted to get back into lifting was I decided that I'm gonna get the best information I can find online. So I started researching, and after about 2 or 3 days of researching online, I came across Kino Body, and that's when I got into Greg's philosophy, and I learned everything I could about his approach.
So,
And
so how
then
long ago was this?
this was in the summer of 2013,
Okay.
so about 2 years ago, yeah, something like that. And yeah, Greg just had very well structured advice, and I understood what I had to do, and that's when I started making progress again. And when I got back into lifting, of course, it took me a while to understand the information and apply it for myself, because when you get your information from different articles and videos as a beginner, it's really hard to put it in the proper order, and you take pieces of advice that you think that fit together, but they actually don't. So in the first about I don't know 8 9 months, I actually did things suboptimally because I didn't understand what I had to do. But after a while, of course, the pieces started to fit together, and I understood the whole picture.
Cool. So you mentioned several cool points. I'm not sure which one I should go with. Let's just start with so as far as Greg, and let's just give him a big shout out, because he was a great help for me as well. But what was the thing that really got you in his message?
Um, First of all, he he looked really good, so it was the results speak for themselves. And he was actually the first guy I encountered online that um, had a philosophy for building a great physique. So he gave you the goal and also the means to get there, which is actually he defined the kinobody physique, the three kinds of physiques: the warrior, Greek god, and superhero. And I realized, oh yeah, finally someone defines the goal, because everybody goes to the gym and doesn't know what they want to achieve. So that was the first thing. And secondly, that the information was presented in a step-by-step fashion. So look, you first need to get lean. Awesome. Then you need to build strength. Okay. Then you need to lean bulk. Then you need to cut again. So it was in stages. And that's what got me into his approach. And that's why I'm actually now a partner of Kinobody, because I really believe in Greg's philosophy and in his teachings and lessons. And I'm trying to also bring something new to the table.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what I really like about him is that like at first it was kind of like the way I found you is just I found him in a few videos when he was interviewing other people. Like I was following Kiefer, John Kiefer. I don't know if
Mhm.
you've familiar with his work, but Ari Hofmakler, and he did interview with other people, and just like looking at his face, I didn't put it together that wow, this guy actually had a crazy physique. And there are just a few things that he's just really adamant about, like um, in his message, like not necessarily building up a mass monster bodybuilder physique and just
Mhm.
focusing on getting lean, chiseled, building sleek legs that are athletic and look good. And these things like that, they're just always coming back in his message. And
Mhm.
so he's a very different segment of, yeah. So before you mentioned that you made a lot of mistakes in your journey. What kind of like how did it differ from what you mentioned that you did, like the muscle confusion and stuff like that? I know that you're now doing intermittent fasting, which we'll go into very soon, what did you do
Mhm.
before? Like, how did it look like basically for you?
So right when I was getting started, my first few months, yeah. Well, we were lifting 3 days a week, a chest day, a back day, and an arms day. That was it. And we were doing about 20, 25 sets for each body part, with a lot of isolation movements. And so, for example, on my arms day, I was doing 3 exercises for my biceps and 3 exercises for my tricep. And on chest day, I was doing flat bench press, then I was doing incline, then I did flat dumbbell bench press, then I did incline dumbbell bench press, then I went to decline, and finally I finished it off with flies. So it was a lot of volume with sets after set. So, but of course it works for a while. Everything works for a while as a beginner. But inevitably, after a few months, I hit a plateau that I could not get over. And that's when I started losing motivation, because when progress doesn't happen, you lose motivation. That's a law, basically. And I didn't know anything about nutrition. I thought that carbs were bad. That's all I knew. And I didn't know that there was an actual recommended recommended protein intake. I wasn't counting my protein nor my calories. I didn't know what a calorie is. I thought that to get lean, you need to eat frequent meals, and that's what I did. I used to prepare those Tupperwares in my fridge. That was after a few months of lifting, when I was already being interested in getting lean and have more muscle definition. And of course, none of those things. Uh, so, some of those things worked because for example, I did lose some fat with those frequent meals, because I was actually eating very very little in each meal, and because there was that structure, I was actually in a calorie deficit for about 3 or 4 weeks, and I did lose some fat. But after that, it stopped working, and I didn't know why. Also, when I found out that carbs were bad, and I started to avoid everything, bread, cakes, stuff like that I used to eat a lot as in high school. Of course, that also created a calorie deficit and led to some fat loss, but I didn't know the cause. And because of those things, I was stalling. So those were my major mistakes in the beginning.
Yeah. So when you started following kind of the approach that you follow now, what was your kind of initial motivation? Did you want to get lean, or did you want to get big and muscular, or what was the thing that got you?
I actually, right in the beginning, I actually sent a consultation email to Greg, and uh, I asked basically how Greg did the consultations. Initially was you sent him an email with all the data that he asked, like your age, your diet, your lifting experience, your goals, all that stuff, and a few pictures. And then he replied with a comment, with an email where he told you the price and what he thinks it needs to be done, and how long it will take, and all that. So you get an idea of how the consultation process would be. And Greg replied with that email, and he actually explained the overall philosophy that I need to follow. So I told him, this is where I am. I also sent him some pictures, and I want to look like, I think it was Christian Bale in American Psycho, so the warrior physique. And he
Yeah.
replied, okay, I think the first step you need to do is to cut until your waist reaches this measurement, and your body fat percentage is in this range. And then you need to lean bulk until you hit the uh, until you reach the level of muscularity that you are happy with. And I said, wow, okay, so this is the road, basically, the what I need to do. And that's what I did. I started getting interested in fat loss, in nutrition. I learned about calories, I learned about macros. I learned about if it fits your macros, and soon enough, I was doing if it fits your macros basically, and I was using a calorie counting app, and that's how I got lean initially. And in terms of lifting, I actually did a routine that wasn't very good. I was lifting five days a week, a lot of very high frequency, a lot of cardio, and of course it did work because there was also muscle memory from the first few months that I was lifting. Um, but I was also in a very big calorie deficit, and I lost fat very fast. I got very lean in about 5 weeks, but and I also gained some muscle because of muscle memory. But that's when my testosterone dropped a lot because uh, I was eating very little. I was eating very low calories, high protein, a lot of training, and that combination is very bad for testosterone.
Yeah. First of all, I think people need to check your channel out, because I think now you're basically reached your initial goal, the Patrick Bateman
Yeah.
physique. I think, by the way, you guys are a little bit harsh on your body fat percentages, because I know that you usually say that you're around 10%. I would say
Oh, I
you're
am.
I
I
would say
am.
you're more like around 8 or 9, like just judging from your videos and stuff.
Uh, I I don't know. I think most people underestimate how much body fat they have because if you think about it, if you're 6% body fat, that's when where you have veins basically everywhere. So you have veins even on your chest, veins running across your abs. You can't pinch fat anywhere, and um, I was not. I'm not close to that point. Uh, now I think I'm around. Currently, I think I'm around 10, 11, maybe even 12%. But actually, something that I'm blessed with is I have pretty good body fat distribution. So I store fat evenly, almost evenly on my body. I store fat very easily on my arms. Actually, when I'm at a higher body fat percentage, my arms get huge,
which
and
is
I
a good thing.
also it is a good thing. I also get fat stored in my face. You can see that in if you check out my videos at the beginning of my cut, you'll see that I have a moon face, and as the months progress, I get more chiseled. And no, so I really do think that I'm above 10% at this point.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting what you're mentioning, because it's a huge thing. Like, um, me, for example, my face pretty much looks all the time like this, and I'm like 9 or 10% at the moment. And I for a very long time I was always just trying to approach single digits, and I always bounce back, and I was always like what the fuck, I cannot get below 13-14%. And looking back, I was at like 11-12% a lot of times, but my body fat distribution is just, yeah, that stomach area is just very, very stubborn. And if you look at
Oh
someone like
yeah,
that you're saying, like yourself or Greg, for example, it's, I mean, and it's not even necessarily better if you're looking at his videos from like a few years ago, or even like 1 or 2 years ago. He just like has a really like puffy face when he's like around 11 or 12%, but
hmm
you can kind of see abs even when he's at a higher body fat percentage. So it's not even necessarily one or the other is better. It's just different.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think Greg also has good body fat distribution. So we are the lucky ones, I guess, because you can still look pretty good in good lighting, even if you are a little fatter. So not very lean, but yeah, as you said, the body fat percentage um, is the same. You just look a little bit different.
Yeah. So you went through a cut. I saw a few of your videos on aggressive fat loss and stuff. What was it hard for you to get very lean? What did you find challenging? Yeah, how was that process for you?
I actually find cutting pretty easy. Um, I don't think. I think it's because of my personality. I'm the kind of guy that is pretty disciplined, so I have no problem sticking to a routine. If I said I was gonna do something, I usually do it. So sticking to a calorie deficit has never been an issue for me. And fat loss actually, in my mind, is easy because all you have to do is be patient. So you do the same thing every day, and you just wait. What I actually find more challenging is lean bulking or gaining muscle or gaining strength because there's a lot more complexity there. Things need to be changed up. Um, you need to rotate exercises. You need to modify the volume. You need to pay attention to the progression model, all that stuff. So it's a lot more complicated. Fat loss really is about creating that deficit and finding an enjoyable way to do it. And you mentioned aggressive fat loss. Greg's course is the best diet I've ever done. I was actually talking with Greg on on Hangouts a few days ago, and he said if I considered writing a fat loss course myself, and I said, look, I would, but I would just copy your stuff because I hadn't found a way yet to improve what he has done in that course, and so it was pretty easy. My last cut took about 10 to 11 weeks, vacation included, and I just got to the point where to the level of leanness I wanted, and then I increased my calories to maintenance.
Yeah. How is social life and stuff like that for you when you're in deficit? Because for me, for a long time, that was just the biggest obstacle. Like I would be like on the track and everything, and then like an invitation would come, like, okay, dinner at my place or something. I'm like, oh fuck, like, okay, that's it. And it would just set me back every single time, pretty much actually until I found this approach, which is more flexible. But how is that for you?
Wow, this is a very good question. So how I handle that is I do not take planned refeeds like most people recommend. So you have a day in a week where you increase your calories to maintenance. What I actually do is I make my refeed day one of those days where I have a social interaction, a social invitation. So, for example, if you cut for 2 months, inevitably there will be an event that you will have to attend where people will be eating. Either if it's a birthday, a wedding, graduation, I probably a holiday or something like that where people eat. So you have to attend that, and you can make that your refit day for the week, and you can just eat at maintenance. And something else that makes a huge difference is saving most of your calories for the evening meal. So
Exactly.
so with intermittent fasting, if you skip breakfast, you have a light uh, meal around lunch, a small meal around lunch. Then you have another small meal, maybe in the late afternoon, or maybe you just have a fruit or a very low calorie snack. And then you find that at the end of the day, you still have around 1,000 to 1,200 calories left for your evening meal, and you can spend that on a huge meal when you go out, or maybe a smaller meal and a few drinks. So it's really you find that you have a lot more flexibility when eating out, and you can enjoy larger meals without going over your deficit.
Yeah, it's several good points there that you bring up. But I think, like, for me, the big thing about intermittent fasting is this, that it provides this flexibility, because typically I have like around 1,000 calories to spare, like within 2 hours of going to bed,
Mhm.
which is pretty cool. It sometimes gets a little bit, because I'm one of those people who, if I had my way, then I would have 1,000 calories for every 2 hours of the day. But if I have to, but since it's a limited room, I would rather have that like towards the end of the day when I'm at home and bored. But yeah, I think that just makes it so much easier when you have such a big wiggle room at that critical period of the day when most of these social events come up. It makes it a lot more easier. So
Exactly. Hmm.
yeah,
That's
so
also,
go ahead.
yeah, yeah. So I just wanted to say that's the main reason why. So a lot of people, not a lot, some people ask me if they can do intermittent fasting in the evening. So you eat your breakfast and you eat until late afternoon, and then you don't eat at night, and you get the same effect as intermittent fasting when you skip breakfast. And physiologically, yes, that would be the same, but I never recommend them to take that approach, because then you need to starve at night, and that means that you cannot attend any social event where you need to eat. So for example, let's say that it's Thanksgiving dinner. What are you gonna do? Are not gonna eat? Maybe it's your brother's birthday, and you go out, and um, there's food. Maybe you go get a pizza or something and a few beers. What are you gonna do? Are not gonna eat because you need to do intermittent fasting. So I think that that's not a good approach. Not having an evening meal is not sustainable and doesn't fit a normal lifestyle, in my opinion.
Yeah, I was just watching a video the other day of a guy talking about like, yeah, I finished eating at 1 p.m. and I feel so much better on an empty stomach. And I'm like, what? Like, what's wrong with you? Like, what are you talking about? Like, no one sleeps better on an empty stomach. Like, Jesus. Yeah. So, what did I want to bring up now? Yeah. So, as far as in intermittent fasting, um, how does this setup generally look like for you? And yeah, first of all, how do you normally structure your day with eating?
Okay, so I usually wake up around 9 to 10 a.m. Um, I drink water in the first few hours of the day, and then I have a coffee around 12. That coffee really helps with appetite. It suppresses your appetite. It blunts your appetite, and you can extend your fast for longer without feeling hunger. And then around 1 to 2 p.m. I'll have a small meal. My setup usually varies between a cut and a bulk, because if I'm in a surplus and I have to eat a lot of calories, I find it pretty hard to um, to have a very huge meal, so about 2,000 calories. Uh, so if I'm cutting, I'm gonna have as my first meal, I'm gonna have something like 30 to 40 grams of protein, and a large salad. So that would be my first meal. Then in the late afternoon, I'm gonna have some sort of dessert, usually chocolate or maybe ice cream, or maybe I'll prepare a dessert for myself, because I find that including um, desserts or cheat foods in your diet from the beginning actually prevents cravings. So if you make those cheat meals, those cheat foods, a part of your daily diet, then you won't crave them at all. You will not think them about you will not think about cheating, because every day you have something that you really enjoy. And then in the last part of the day, I have a huge meal, 1,000 to 1,200 calories when I'm cutting. That usually includes about 100 grams of protein, and some veggies, and usually potatoes, a large serving of potatoes. And that meal completely satisfies me, and I go to sleep a happy man.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
well, when I'm bulking, when I'm in a surplus, I need to include more calories in those first two meals. So instead of only having maybe protein and veggies as my first meal, I'm gonna include some carbs as well, maybe about 100 grams of carbs, or maybe I'm gonna have a larger meal in the late afternoon around 5 o'clock, and the setup is pretty much the same, just the portions are bigger. So you include more food at each meal, and you choose slightly higher calorie foods. So you find it easier to hit a certain surplus of calories while eating the same quantity.
Yeah. Um, yeah, it's interesting. Like, to me, do you have like a big appetite? Like, are you a big eater in general?
Not really. I I do get uh, hungry and cravings like everybody. Sometimes you just feel the need to eat more than usual, but not really. I don't cheat very often. I don't binge at all. And I think my highest calorie day was about 5,000 calorie. And I did it last weekend when I met a good friend of mine, and we did an epic high calorie day because we planned on doing that for a long time. But no, not really. When I stick to my protocol, to my diet, I stick to it.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that including foods that you like on a regular basis prevents cravings, and I think that's totally true. I think my relationship has become a lot healthier with food that way. Um, that said, I think like Greg mentioned that every person has to find that kryptonite of theirs they tend to screw up on.
Yeah.
Like for example, for me, ice cream. Like it's there's just something about ice cream, and pretty much doesn't even matter what type of ice cream, that there's just no stop. I'm full kind of signal in my brain. I can just keep going and going and going, like infinite. I think Greg mentioned that for him it's cookies. So I think it's
Yeah.
important that every person finds that kind of particular item that they're kind of sensitive to screw up
There,
on.
there is one more thing that's worth mentioning here is that not only does the type of dessert matter, but also the quantity that you have inside the house. So, for example,
Oh
if
yeah.
I have a lot of cookies in my house, I'm gonna find it very hard to stop at the portion that I plan to eat. The same goes for ice cream. If I have a large container of ice cream in my fridge, I'm not gonna have just one bowl. I'm gonna find reasons to justify myself to have more ice cream and less carbs from other sources, and I will do that very often. So what I do to prevent this problem is I always buy single servings of dessert, or if I prepare it myself, I'll only prepare the portion that I intend to eat. And I think that this is the main reason people cheat on their own when they are at home. So outside of social events, the main reason people cheat is because they have the opportunity. They have the food inside the house. They have the desserts there. It's there, and it's very easy to take and eat. If you don't have that, then you won't do it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's totally true. I even do kind of the same thing with blueberries and things like that. Like I kind of account for the whole bag when I buy it. It's like I'm not just gonna have half of it. Like I'm gonna fit it in.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so we've been talking for 40 minutes so far and mainly hit nutrition. Let's quickly talk about training a little bit. How does your general training philosophy go these days, and what do you do?
Okay, so I'm still following Greg's Greek God program. I've been following it for more than 1 year now, about 1 year and a half, and it was great. So Greg's philosophy puts training into a very easy to understand fashion. So basically, if you want to build muscle, you need to have a certain level of strength, because usually for natural lifters, strength correlates with muscle size. So it's much easier to go after strength, after relative strength on a few key lifts, and to know that once you hit that strength level, you will have the muscle development that you want, instead of going to the gym hoping that you will gain muscle because you are going to the gym. So tracking your strength is the best way to track your muscle development. So the main goal of training should be strength gains, because something very interesting is that we can't actually train for size. Muscle growth is not an adaptation in and of itself. It's only a result of we can either train for strength or for endurance. So muscle either grows to produce more force, that is the adaptation that you ask it. You ask the body to produce more force because you need to move heavier weights, or if you're doing some sort of pump workout, you are depleting a lot of glycogen and you are asking the body to improve its endurance. So you store more glycogen and you are able to perform a higher workload. And those are actually the only two ways that you can stimulate muscle growth. So strength or endurance. Now, strength produces the muscle fibers have a lot larger potential for growth when you train for. Wait, let me think about it, how to put this.
Yep.
You can gain a lot more muscle from strength than from pump training, because there's only so much glycogen that you can store in your muscles before you are maxed out. But the muscle fibers can grow in size a lot before they hit their genetic potential. So, sorry. So that's why you can gain a lot of strength over time, but you can only gain so much size doing pump workouts.
Yeah, yeah. It's a very interesting concept because as you mentioned, Greg, and I don't know if you followed Martin Berkhan's work at all from Lean Gains.
Of course. I'm a huge fan of Martin.
Yeah, and I mean, their approach is fairly similar, although I know that Greg is really kind of freaking out when people compare them. But in many ways, I think Greg is kind of like a mainstream version of Martin. Like, their approach is very similar, but Greg is actually willing to put himself out and be more public about his approach. And I think kind of my gut says, because I'm sure you're familiar with the kind of the muscle research, Eric Helms, Lane Norton, Brett Schoenfeld, they pretty much conclusively agree that the number one driver of muscle growth is volume.
Mm-hmm.
And a few guys like Greg, for example, and now like yourself, kind of go by just progressive overload and improve your relative strength, which is like how much you lift compared to your body weight as much as you can. And I kind of wonder if this is like more of a foolproof way, because I mean, if you're just getting as strong as you can and you stay lean, you will look better. But would it still be true that if you did it optimally, volume would be the number one driver? Or I'm just really wondering about the mechanism. I don't know. What do you think about this?
So volume, when people say that volume is the main driver of hypertrophy, I think is that what they mean is that volume is the main driver of progressive overload, actually. So getting stronger is what actually leads to muscle growth, but to stimulate those strength gains, you need to have a certain amount of volume. So you can't gain strength without doing a lot of volume. That's the thing. But I think everyone universally agrees that the main goal of your training is progressive overload, getting strong on those key lifts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm planning to, because as you may know, Eric Helms is in New Zealand, and I'm wondering if I could somehow put together, like I could travel to Auckland where he is, and maybe do a quick interview with him about this. I wonder what he would say, but what you're saying makes a great amount of sense. So
Yeah,
so
so
how
I'm a
yeah, go ahead.
I'm a big fan of Eric Helms actually, and Eric talks about, so the philosophy of the 3DMJ coaches is that as long as you are making progress, you should do as little volume as you can. So why, excuse me, my throat aches a lot. I have a little cold, and uh,
Oh,
talking so much is yeah, bothering me. Okay,
sorry, I'm
so
exhausted.
no problem. So basically, as long as you're making progress, you should be doing as little volume as you can, because there is no sense if you're getting the same amount of, if you're doing the same amount of progress by doing uh, lower volume, there is no reason why you should do more, because once you hit a plateau, there is nowhere else for you to go. You cannot add more volume than you can. So if you are already doing high volume, you cannot add more volume in to stimulate more adaptation. And usually another reason why people talk about volume a lot is because the research is usually done on untrained people, and they respond to volume a lot better because they cannot, if an untrained person to work with loads in the 4 to 6 rep range, they're not going to be able to work properly. But if you have them do a lot of volume, they will find it easier, and they will accumulate more volume that way, and they'll of course perform better. But Lyle McDonald actually talks a lot about this. If you take two guys, for example, and you put one on a very high volume routine, but he doesn't gain strength, uh, 1 year from now he will look pretty much the same as he did before, even if he does a lot of pump training and all that stuff, because really progressive overload is the main driver of hypertrophy. The muscle damage and cellular fatigue only account for a small part of that growth. It does matter, but it doesn't compare to getting stronger. But on the other hand, if you have the same guy that is doing maybe lower volume, but he's gaining strength, he will actually be more muscular than the other guy.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if you've heard of Menno Henselmans.
I
Um,
heard of him, but I didn't study any of his work yet.
Yeah, I recommend his resource. He puts out little content, but when he does, it's real quality. And I actually did like a consultation with him in the past, and
Oh, that's great.
and it was a really awesome experience. And at the end, he told me, like, at the end of the consultation, he told me, like, for future reference, like, look, if your bench isn't going up over the months, it's no way your chest is getting bigger, because it's physically impossible to be bigger or get bigger without getting stronger. Those were his exact words. So there must be something to it then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of a random question. As we slowly start to wrap up things, how is kind of fitness in Romania? I'm just wondering.
How is what?
Fitness in Romania, like compared to what you see in America, England, stuff like that.
Romania is all areas of life, basically. So
Yeah.
things started in the Western countries, and then everyone in the world adapts the same thing. And we are now only now we are getting hit by that fitness craze, where everybody has gym membership, and everybody's going to TRX classes and Zumba classes, and they of course going to the gym, and so we are the fitness field in Romania is developing very fast, but it's nowhere near the as developed as it is in the United States, or maybe in Eastern Europe, or maybe even Australia or New Zealand.
Yeah, in Hungary, it's just like whenever I sometimes type something into YouTube in Hungarian, it's always some steroid junkie talking about like, yeah, you have to eat 6 meals a day and cottage cheese before bed and no carbs after 8
Yeah,
p.m.
yeah. Okay, so if you're talking about that, yes, the information is pretty bad around here. Usually, the latest research hasn't been translated in Romania, and people, for example, I started my fitness site in Romania in Romanian. I was writing in Romanian, and I was talking about intermittent fasting, and everybody commented, "You are crazy. If you're skipping breakfast, you won't be building muscle. You are stupid. Breakfast is the most important. That's when your body is depleted of nutrients, and you need to eat right after you wake up because you haven't eaten in 8 hours when you were sleeping." And I said, "Okay, all right. I'm not even gonna argue because it's no use." So I think that. English-speaking countries excluded, everywhere else, the fitness knowledge is really far behind, and so the average American, the average uh, person in the in the United Kingdom, maybe they know what a calorie is. They do have a concept that a burger has more calories than a salad, but in Romania, people don't actually know what calories are. I'm talking about the average population. They don't know what carbs are. So young people like my age, they are more exposed to these terms through movies and television, and they know that stuff. But if you go into a older population, maybe 35 years old plus, almost nobody knows this stuff.
Yeah, yeah, it's at the same time it's kind of a big opportunity for you and for me actually in Hungary. Like I did a few videos on another channel on intermittent fasting, and there's no word in Hungarian really to it. Like in English it kind of feels natural to say it, but in Hungarian it just felt stupid to like somehow make out these words in Hungarian. Like intermittent fasting kind of sounds stupid in Hungarian. So yeah, but at least it's good. It's a big gap to follow. All right, I think let's start wrapping this up, and yeah, like tell people like what stuff are you working on, where they can find your channel, and yeah.
Okay, so my main site is ThinkEatLift.com. So ThinkEatLift.com. That's where you'll find pretty much everything I do. In terms of articles, I post my videos there. That's where you'll find my free ebooks that I offer. I put a lot of time in those ebooks, and you should really get them. And then I have my YouTube channel, which is my name, Radu Antoniu. You can type that in YouTube and you will find me, or you can just find my videos through my site. And I'm active on Instagram, again my name, and on Facebook you can find me at Think It Lift Fitness Blog. And other social media, I'm not really into Twitter. I'm not on Snapchat yet. So if you want to get in touch with me, you can do it. You can do that either through my site, Instagram, or Facebook, or YouTube.
Awesome. Well, man, thanks so much for doing this with me, and yeah, luckily the internet connection didn't let us down, and I think I'm surprised actually, because internet in New Zealand is like, you won't believe how bad it is.
Really?
Yeah, no, it's but yeah, I think we actually shared a lot of good content with people, so it's really awesome.
Hmm.
Yeah,
I'm really grateful that you had me on, Abel. Thank you.
yeah, no problem, man, and keep up with the good work. And
Thanks.
yeah, thanks, man. All right, let's stop this broadcast now, and bye everyone. Check Radu out,
Bye bye.
and see you
Yeah.
later.
Talk soon.